Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
A lot of energy in this room here. Welcome to all who've gathered here and to our candidates in Chicago Heights and Jackson, Mississippi. Was asked to remind you to be sure to mute when you are not talking in Jackson and in Chicago Heights. Those in Columbia, Missouri are not able to be with us today. We also welcome three guests, Gretchen Mahaney Caldwell. Are you here, Gretchen? Back here. And Lucinda and Keith Busher. We're very happy to have you with us. Even though many have asked that we gather outside today, I think we better stay inside. I'm really excited about our formation today, and I think you will be too as we go along with the different presentations. The afternoon will include three presentations entitled Uncovering the Light of the Gospel, Anti-Racism, Jubilee Farm, and Core Unum, our House of Hospitality. Each will be 35 to 40 minutes long, with a short break in between the first two. This is a session that I ask you to plan a little extra time this afternoon, so I hope that works okay for you. We will be going until about 3:30. I'd like to just share with you that we have been praying for our candidate, Betsy Vogt, and Betsy Vogt had her baby, which we will put the picture on the table, and also Sister Georgiana prepared a card for us to sign to send to her. The baby's name is Gabriel, and she has several other boys with biblical names. This is number 4, so we're grateful for the gift of this new life. Our Dominican mission statement reads, called by God into right relationship with all creation, and graced by Dominican life and mission, we compassionately preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. It is part of our Dominican vision to commit ourselves to living our Dominican charism by embracing the courage and trust of our foundresses, and by responding to the needs of the times for the life of the world. These three presentations will give you a glimpse of how we are trying to preach the gospel in our world today, and how we are partnering with our associates and many others to do this. I thought that it was most fitting today that we begin with the prayer for the life of the world, and I'd like to just ask you to look at that prayer, and we'll make 2 additions to it, so that it's owned not just by our sisters, but also by our Dominican associates. If you look in the second line, where it says, we, the Dominican Sisters of Springfield, we'll add, we, the Dominican Sisters and Associates of Springfield. And then if you look in the second stanza, on the 4th line, we seek to expand the expression of our vows. We'll add there, and commitments, as that is what our associates make, is a commitment to live the gospel in your life. And so let us pray together. Holy mystery, ever ancient, ever new, we, the Dominican Sisters and Associates of Springfield, come before you, aware of our interconnectedness in the cosmos and in solidarity with the rostros concretos of the marginalized. We come with deep gratitude for our common call. Draw us into communion with you and all creation, living with intentional awareness and openness to change. We seek to expand the expression of our vows and commitments, inviting others to walk with us in sharing our charism. Free our hearts to recognize and attend to Christ in hidden, expected places. We renounce our participation in the sin of racism and reject the societal barriers created by the misuse of power. Through our contemplation, transform us to listen deeply to one another and to the brokenness of the world. Bless our efforts to be the holy preaching. Christ, you are expansive. We journey in that truth, offering our testimonio de vida. Amen. For those of you who are with us for the first time, this prayer followed the general chapter that we have every 5 years, bringing together all of our discussions and all of our decisions, that this is what we would like to give life to in the next 5 years through our ministries and through those things that God calls us to be involved in. Our first speakers today are Bob Blackwell and Sister Kathleen and Tait, and they will be speaking to us about anti-racism. Bob ministers as the Chief of Racial Equity Practice at the Department of Children and Family Services. He has been part of the anti-racism team for the last 10 years, and he is a Dominican associate. When I asked Bob about renewing his commitment one day in the dining room as an associate for the next 5 years, he said, "Sister, just consider me renewed." Bob and his wife, Carolyn, are the proud parents of 3 daughters, Nicole, Tracy, and Deanna. Sister Kathleen Ann Tait has been a Dominican sister for 45 years. Sister has ministered both as a teacher and a high school administrator. She served at Sacred Heart Griffin and Marian Catholic High School as principal. Sister Kathleen was assistant superintendent of high schools in the Archdiocese of Chicago. She has served on the Dominican anti-racism team since its inception. Sister views this work as integral to bringing about God's desires for creation. And so we welcome Bob and Sister Kathleen.
Thank you very much. Bob and I are thrilled to be with you here this afternoon. Last month when we met, Sister Marceline talked about our social justice work. And if you remember, she invited you at that point. Hello, everybody. She invited you at that point to look at social justice as something where you start to recognize the haves and the have-nots, how often we make decisions that benefit one group of people over another. Well, anti-racism is one of our major focuses of our social justice work. And our session this afternoon will focus on why we're involved in anti-racism and what that really means. For the Dominican Sisters of Springfield, it was 20 years ago in one of our governing sessions that we call our general chapters, that we made a commitment to stand with people on the margins. And as we looked at what that meant for us, we realized that people on the margins, and one of the things that divided the haves and have-nots, went along racial lines. And so we started analyzing what puts people out there. You know, how come we're not all one? And we recognized that racism was at the heart of a lot of that. So 15 years ago, in one of those governing sessions, the Dominican Sisters entrusted the Springfield Anti-Racism Team to lead the congregation in a transformation to a multicultural, anti-racist institution. You know, when you look at preaching the gospel, when you look about bringing about what God wants for us on this world, in this world, it is about equity. It is about respecting individuals for who they are. It's helping everyone come to recognize God's role in their lives and bring that to fulfillment. And so for Springfield Dominicans, this is core. This is what we're called to do because we see how eradicating racism will bring that to greater fulfillment. Now, for me personally, why do I stay involved in it? I went to my first anti-racism training 19 years ago in Chicago, and that was even before the Dominican Sisters started it. It was a crossroads training, and for me, it was like it took the scales off my eyes. I had been a history teacher. I have a major in history and a minor in math, but I had been teaching history and thinking about the American dream, equality for all. And at that training, I recognized how narrow our understanding of the American dream was, how distorted it really was. We don't talk in American history, or we didn't at that time, we're better about it now, about how we got the land in America. We took it from the people who were here first. We didn't really understand that when we erased slavery, that we really didn't give people of color equity with us. And I couldn't believe that I had been so duped. And so for me, it set me on a search for truth. Veritas, that truth that if we really want collaboration, if we really want equity among people, we have to work for the justice of making us one. And so I stay committed to this work for the same reason I stay with my vows, to bring about God's true vision for who we need to be for one another.
I thought that I would be, my dominant sentiment up here would be that I was anxious about the presentation. But as it turns out, I'm being overwhelmed by a sense of hunger. I'm hungry right now. So forgive me if my stomach starts speaking louder than I speak. But in terms of, I'm so excited about being here with you all, and I'm glad that I'm not responsible for that clicker that Kathleen has, and I'm going to try to pay attention to what shows up in terms of prompting our the progress of our presentation on the screen here. But in terms of my reflection, in terms of why this work for me, I do this work because I have no plausible alternative. Given the lifelong, harsh, and unmerited injustices that my mother, my father, my grandmother, sisters and brothers, my mixed-race children, grandchildren, and a nation of people of color are experiencing under the system of racism. My soul tells me to fight. My humanity compels me to rebel. My God instructs me to forsake that which is most ungodly, racism. I'm a 67-year-old black man, born to black parents, raised in the white man's country that was stolen from Native Americans, and intentionally designed to enrich white men only. I joined these white and Peruvian Dominicans because I believe that their liberation from racism is one of our best chances to liberate my community of Springfield from racism. So, racism, anti-racism, as a way of being. What are we committing to in SSTART? We are not racist. That is insufficient. That is also not true. We aspire as the Dominicans' anti-racism team and on behalf of the congregation to be anti-racist and to be multicultural. Let me share with you a couple of definitions from a summary of a book on how to be an anti-racist by Ibram Kendi. While I also try to keep all this paper from just falling at my feet. Forgive me. So, key points about racism. A racist is someone who supports a racist policy through their actions or inaction, or expresses an idea based in racism. An anti-racism or anti-racist is someone who supports an anti-racist policy through their actions or expresses an idea based on anti-racism. And I want you to hold dear to the difference. It is insufficient to just simply say, I'm not a racist. It strikes me as the old adage, if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. Because we, every one of us in this room, and for the past 400 years, have been socialized to a construct of racism. And all the things that have occurred to this date, be it the civil rights movement, women's liberation, and other significant events in our history, have not changed the fact that racism is alive and well today. So simply to say, and this is the same air that all of us in this room are breathing. We didn't create it, but what are we doing? What are we doing to change it? And it's not sufficient to just say, I'm not a racist. We're not looking for the racist in the room. We're talking about a system of oppression that this country currently owns, and that we as an anti-racism team and the Dominicans seek to change that, to actively change that and claim an anti-racist identity.
You know, as we look at how we are anti-racist, it's really rooted in values, and we call those our transformational values. Now, this probably isn't the first time you've seen these, but we're going to take just a couple of minutes today to talk about that. As Dominicans, we're trying to live into these values, not only with our anti-racism work, but also living into these values of how we live life. And so we talk about both and thinking rather than the dualistic either or. Now, I told you I was a former math teacher. Dualistic thinking is in my genes. It's right or wrong. You know, it's black or white. And I like those definite answers. But when you want a single answer, an either or answer, it does narrow your thought. And when you look at how complex our world is today, it's not an either or. Very often it's a both and situation. And so we're very careful about that. You know how sometimes you're in a conversation and somebody will say, I think it ought to be A and B. A both and attitude or disposition would answer that with, yes. And I also think C and D are true. So you're holding I'm going to have a hard time talking with my hands and talking at the same time. But you're holding two things that could be opposing. But if you hold them in a both and, you're more likely to come together with a solution. Listen to the difference of tone. Well, I think A and B would be good. Or, I really think C and D would work better. You know, that sets up that competition, that working against each other. So both and is one of our key values. Abundant worldview. Is the glass half empty or half full? I mean, that's a simplified way to say it. However, when you also are thinking of scarcity, sometimes when you're looking at a problem, the first thing that might pop into your head is, well, we don't have the personnel, we don't have the money, we don't have X, we don't have Y. And as soon as you start looking at what limits that idea, it squashes it. And so we try to practice an abundant worldview. Now that doesn't mean you don't keep things in check or that you're not looking realistically. But very often with an abundant worldview, when there's a situation, rather than saying what limits it, we say, what is the power that we do have? And how can we use that? And as soon as you do, the people that are involved kind of open up and say, well, I could do this part. And somebody else says, I can do this part. And I could do this little bit. And when you gather those together, you realize you really can move something forward. And so again, realistically, we may not have all the resources we want, but we do have some resources. So that's the abundant worldview.
And just a comment about that sense of scarcity and the extent to which scarcity promotes the misuse of power. We think in this country, and frankly other countries across our world, and our current mood around immigration, and this sense that by accepting others, we are somehow going to limit ourselves, and that we should build walls, that we should create policies and practices to exclude others, as opposed to this abundant worldview, which then promotes an understanding and a disposition of collective work, collective responsibility. And so I think these things shape our world in very significant ways, and we choose the abundant worldview as opposed to this sense of scarcity, which then causes us to hoard, to protect, to war. And this is not God's intent.
The other two values are transparent communications and collaboration and cooperation. And I think why those are important to us, the opposite of, or the other way of doing it other than transparent communications is secrecy. Very often in systems and operations, and again, we're talking about systemic racism here, secrecy is more like a need to know. They don't need to know, we'll go ahead and do it over here. The best example that I can think of this is when I was principal of a school up north, which the people at Marion will remember. One year we had a school play, and the director came to me and said, we don't have enough kids for the play, we have to cancel it. I said, okay. So we canceled it. Now you can imagine for the students who were in the play and the parents, the drama happened before the stage happened. And when I went and talked to the kids about it, and I said, we simply don't have enough kids. And they said, well, we'll work at that. And sure enough, within 24 hours, they had enough people for the show, and the show went on. All right, so what was my mistake and the director's mistake? You know, it's like, we don't need to bother with them with that. We just don't have enough. It could be, you know, scarcity view too. But when you involve people in a decision and you're transparent about what's going on, then those people feel more a part of it and more part of a solution for that. So it's beneficial for the whole group. And collaboration and cooperation, it's not always efficient. You know, going to those kids and talking about that took more time than a simple decision did. But it is a way of being together that brings about the unity that God wants for us.
Yeah, and I can, you know, this is an educator up here and I'm a social worker, right? And I see the areas from which we pull our examples. And I think about, when I think about those, the transparencies and collaborations, you know, when you think about the interaction between people of color and white, those values mean everything to moving away from racism and toward an anti-racist and multicultural existence. And that's probably all I should say about that. Thank you.
So we kind of skipped through this slide. I'm going to go back here just for a minute. When you talk about anti-racism work, it's a way of being. It's informed by a power analysis. It's sustained by a set of practices. It seeks the liberation of all beings, and it's grounded in accountability to anti-racist people of color. So we've been talking about a way of being and the transitional values. It's also informed by a power analysis.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about that power analysis. So in looking at the definition of racism that we use to guide our work is racial prejudice plus the misuse of power by systems and institutions. And I should apologize for the first half of my comments because I know that these folks who are Skyped in are looking at the back of my head. And of course that may be an advantage for you actually. So forgive me, you know, for speaking to you in that way. But in terms of, we take a lot of our guidance and methodologies from Crossroads, which is an anti-racist training and organizing institution. And some of the elements that have to do with racism and the power analysis, I'm going to read a couple of things. Racism is not the same thing as individual race, prejudice, and bigotry. All people are racially prejudiced, regardless of race or ethnic identity. It's a part of the air we breathe. It is socialized into every person. But this does not mean, and you may have heard me say something to the contrary, that everyone is racist. Racism is more than race prejudice. It is more than individual attitudes and actions. Racism is the collective actions of a dominant racial group. Systemic power turns race prejudice into racism. And therein is a connection between power and prejudice bringing about racism. Racial prejudice becomes racism when one group's racial prejudices are enforced by the systems and institutions of a society. giving power and privilege based on race to the group in power, and limiting the power and privilege of the racial groups that are not in power. I want to use an example and also help those of you who are associates gain some insight into the path that the congregation and our anti-racism team has traveled, and use this example here. We talk about culture. There's such thing as cultural racism. One of the work that we've done has been both challenging and very heavy lifting, emotionally and institutionally, as it relates to this journey toward anti-racism. I'm reminded that along that path, in some of our interactions, some of our people of color who have been brought into this relationship with the Dominican sisters, we began to talk about and identify what we saw as differences between the interaction between the North American sisters and the Peruvian sisters. The North American sisters being white, the Peruvian sisters being sisters of color. And this is quite unwitting, I might add, that there was this sense that we as people of color had a very clear lens that there was this difference in the relationships and how the Peruvian sisters were viewed as people of color, both honored as sisters and Dominican sisters, but there seemed to be this sense of deference that the Peruvian sisters, in their own experience of racism and how it causes people of color to see themselves as less and causes white people to see themselves as superior, there then is that imbalance in that relationship. And I think as we began to talk about that relationship, it was a very powerful moment for those of us of color and the sisters to really have to think deeply about that. And I think having thought deeply, I have witnessed a transformation in relationship between the North American sisters and the Peruvian sisters as a function of we, North American sisters, need to understand how racism impacts us, how it might impact our sisters of color, and we need to operate in a more anti-racist way. That, for me, said to me, as if it hadn't been said before, that these Dominican sisters were serious about changing their practice as it relates to race. And I think that is that was powerful, and it's just a part of the journey that we are going through as we seek to be much more multicultural and anti-racist. Thanks.
Our anti-racism work is also sustained by a set of practices. I don't remember what we were going to say about that, Bob. We'll get in, and basically, these are the kinds of things we do in our anti-racism team meetings. We pray. It's a source and summit of everything we do. And it's become the source and summit of the anti-racism team. We do some checking in, because when you come to meetings, it's kind of like, what's going on with you? What's going on with you? And how are people coming together? And we also take a look at what's happening out there these days as it relates to anti-racism and how that might impact our team. We do a lot of planning. We work with stakeholder working groups, which are really committees, but we have a committee for each one of our high schools, St. Dominic's Hospital, the Mother House community here, North American Sisters, South American Sisters, and it's a time when we can strategize how are we going to further this work within those groups, and how the people that are working in those institutions can tell us what they're doing with the anti-racism group. We also deepen our analysis. You know, we think we've got this, and we always learn where we don't have it, so we deepen our analysis. And we do some caucusing too. And that's kind of counterintuitive because by caucusing we mean the people of color gather together and the white people gather together. And you think, I thought you were working on unity. But we've discovered as we've gone through anti-racism work that we all have our part in the racial construct that we need to address. So for those of us who are white, we look at our internalized racial superiority. Now, what do we mean by that? You know, Bob mentioned how much racism is in our country, and I talked about that earlier too. But think about it. The school system, the government, land ownership, everything that's in our country was established at a time when people of color weren't thought of as human. They were slaves. They were people who didn't understand. So as a white group of people, we kind of have been socialized to, we know how to do things better. We know how to raise our kids better. Now, that's not really true. But we've been socialized that way. And we have to look at how that really is part of how we were raised and what we need to do to dismantle things so when we're working together on racism, we're not making decisions about racism. We are making decisions about racism.
Right, right. And you know, this is, in sharing this with you, I want to, this is also an advertisement. We're looking for you all to consider engaging with this anti-racism team. And so far, I know, at least as I feel myself, things feel heavy. And this is heavy lifting. But let me tell you, there is nothing any more rewarding than the work that we are doing and the relationships that have resulted that fuel our ability to do this work and that sustain us far beyond this room and into our daily lives. We find ourselves in deep relationship with each other because of some of the methods and practices that you see here. Team building is not just giving lip service to being a team. Team building is a very deliberate effort to gain the understanding of the people that you are working with so that when it comes to heavy lifting, I'm not guessing about Kathleen's perspective on something. Because as a part of our team building, I've had to do a one-on-one with her and her with me, so we kind of understand, well, I kind of know where she's coming from. So when we get to a heavy subject, I don't have to be guessing about where she is. I know where she's coming from. She knows where I'm coming from. And that's a very deliberate attempt at building the kind of relationships that carry you through this work. And I am giving testimony to the fact that these relationships carry me not just through this work, but work at my job, work in my family, and work in my community. So, and I'm happy. I am a happy person. I am also committed to changing this work. So I don't want to get you, I don't want to be indelicate about this. But I also don't want to be speaking as if, you know, this is a piece of cake, you know, it's a casual kind of proposition. It is not casual. It is not a piece of cake either. But it is work that we must do if we're committed to living out the values of the gospel.
Okay, we're running short on time, so we're going to kind of seek through this. But seeking the liberation of all beings, that's part of our work. It's not about winners and losers. It's about all of us being liberated.
I got this.
Okay.
I got this. I got a story for you, right? And a short story because of the time. This is a parable that I think really helps one understand relationship and the relationships that we've just spoke of. And again, I'm trying to keep things from falling down, and I don't know that it's going to work here. Let me just slide this here. So this parable has to do with, it's an illustration. It's the story of a mole and a baby bird, as used in a sermon entitled Being in Right Relationship by Reverend Krista Taves. Now, I know you all have an imagination. I want you to use them now, right? Imagine the story from the bird's perspective. Everything was dark and soft and warm. And then it all went away, and I lay there in the cold and the bright, blinding light. I was helpless and alone and thought I would die. But a small mole walked by and saw me, and seeing that no one came for me, took me to his soft, warm home, and there cared for me. Those who were older than him said it could not be done because I was wild, and I hoped they were wrong, and in part they were. He took care of me, and I grew. My feathers grew strong, my beak grew sharp, and I ached to fly. But Mole loved me and did not want me to go, and so he kept me for himself. Now those who were older than him said I should be set free because I was wild, and I knew they were right. But Mole built a cage for me, and I was back in the dark and soft and warm. But it was not right. I needed to fly. I began to hate Mole. I did not know if I would be able to live this way. But then one day, Mole went away for a long time with a very old mole. When he came back, he was different. I could see it in his eyes. He took me outside and opened the cage, and out I flew. I saw that he wept, but my hunger to be free was stronger than my need to comfort him. And I did what I needed to do. I went and began the life I was supposed to live. Some days, Mole comes and visits me now. At first, I wanted nothing to do with him and kept far away. But now I see that he has changed, and I chirp at him and fly close to his head and no longer hate him. We have both come a long way. Need I talk about the liberation of the bird at the hands of a well-intentioned mole whose intentions, unbeknownst to the mole until he got the wisdom of the older moles, his love created a sense of captivity, a lack of freedom for this bird that he so deeply cared for. And when I think about issues of race and racism and the liberation of all, we have to be in right relationship with one another in order to understand that we must all be free. We must all be free if we are to live out our lives in care for each other, in love for each other, and in right relationship with each other. And if we are not, then we cannot reach right relationship with each other. The work that we do on the team is to put us in right relationship with each other and to put us in right relationship with the issue of racism, which is key to us moving our world, beyond the place that it is today. So.
With this site, I think Bob already really talked about that, and we referenced it before, but grounded in accountability to anti-racist people of color, that has something to do with, I'm not going to make decisions for Bob, and Bob's not going to make decisions for me. We have to ground that in accountability for each other, and I think we'll leave that there.
I think that's good.
Okay. So these are the aspects of our anti-racism work. Way of being informed by a power analysis, sustained by a set of practices, seeking the liberation of all, and grounded in accountability. For you as associates, and I wish we're not going to have time for discussion with this, but as Marceline said last time, as you think about anti-racism, we're asking all of you to just have a different lens if you want. Take those scales off your eyes if you need to. Where do you see that operative? And if you're interested in being part of this team,
let us know.
Let us know. We'd be happy to welcome you. So thank you for your attention today. And Sister Joan.
Thank you, Bob and Kathleen, for your gospel message, and thank you for your invitation. It's wonderful to have you with us. Our second presentation is being given by Sister Rosemarie.
Sister Joan is muted. Sister Joan is muted.
All right, Sister Rosemarie entered the community in 1967, and her ministries have included quite a variety. She was teaching primary grades in Peoria, Chicago, Madison, Illinois, administrator of St. Monica Maternity Center in Springfield, pastoral associate at Sacred Heart Church in Effingham, director and co-founder of Poplar House Clinic, a clinic for the underserved in Rogers, Arkansas. And after serving as counselor and then priors general of the congregation, she finds herself down on the farm. Sister Rosemarie is now the director of Jubilee Farm and loves telling the story. So we welcome Sister today.
Thank you, Sister Joan. Is this on? Yes. It's my pleasure to be here with you today, to be with Chicago Heights and Jackson, and to tell the story. What I'd like to do is start with a reflection and some music. You'll be watching a slide. Just take in the pictures, take in the words to the song, take in the message of the song, and you will have arrived at Jubilee Farm. If you know the song, please sing along. Okay, so welcome to Jubilee Farm, where you can dance in the forest and play in the fields. So why do the Dominican Sisters of Springfield have a farm? In 1999, as the year of Jubilee approached, the Springfield Dominicans purchased land just 3.8 miles west of Veterans Parkway. For us, it began to serve as a symbol of our desire to grow into ecological and spiritual consciousness, and to respond thereby to ecological issues of our day. Since that year, we as a congregation have passed several corporate resolutions in favor of the rights of our beautiful planet Earth. For us, this is an evolving journey. We recognize our ministry at Jubilee Farm as God's mission, not ours. Oops. Jubilee Farm is our way of participating in the great universe story by providing a place where all of creation is safe and honored, and all are welcome to come. Our vision statement reads, Jubilee Farm seeks to preserve the integrity, stability, and beauty of the earth community and to share the gift of the land.
One moment, please.
Okay. In this brief presentation, I'm going to say a little bit about our roots, our reasons for being, our relationships, and our readiness to continue to grow. Our roots. How do we see Jubilee Farm as God's mission, not ours? Our reasons. What current ecological, sociological, and spiritual issues give reason for this mission? What relationships form the community here? And where are we now in readiness to grow even more relationships? So we look at the roots, our faith tradition. When you think of Jesus and all of these stories in the Gospels, we see his profound connection with earth. Jesus preached within an agricultural culture, and so his parables are filled with stories of seeds and harvest, vineyards and weeds, rain and sunsets, sheep and nesting birds, wildflowers clothed with beauty. He even told of his Father's concern for a dead sparrow. So as our gospel and scripture shows us, all of creation matters to God. All of creation is God's testimony of love. And then we have our Dominican roots, 800 plus years old. In the 13th century, our founder, Dominic, preached the truth of the goodness of all of creation. And then one of our early Dominicans, Thomas Aquinas, took on the monumental task of rewriting theology, understanding of God, in light of the universe and creation. Meister Eckhart, Dominican, who died in the 14th century, is considered the greatest of creation mystics. He wrote, and listen to this, every single creature is a book about God. Every single creature is a book about God. And then in our recent history, when in 2015, Pope Francis wrote an official teaching of the Church, his encyclical Laudato Si, on care for our common home, he actually gave affirmation to all congregations, such as ours, that had been preaching this for years. In his encyclical, he addresses right relationship with our use of created and human things and our relationship with all of creation, interconnection, an understanding that what we do to any part of the planet Earth, we do to ourselves. And responsibility. The abundance of creation is threatened by the irresponsible actions of the human community. And what is our response? He also wrote, the entire material universe speaks of God's love, his boundless affection for us. Soil, water, mountains, everything is, as it were, a caress of God. Isn't that beautiful? A caress of God. In recent times, we have seen an urgent call and a tremendous response to ecological issues. Humanity, at its best and most aware, knows that there is a deep interconnection between who we are and the life source of Mother Earth. We sense that intuitively, don't we? Think of a walk in the park, watching a beautiful sunset, sitting at the beach. Nature is restorative. Nature feeds us. Nature gives us everything we need. Love, then, is the meaning encoded at the heart of the universe itself. The loving God's original and ultimate intent is fullness of life, not just for a slice of the world, but for all, poor human beings, living creatures, all of creation. And in our chapter prayer, which we prayed this morning, we saw the words, for the life of the world. And just as everything that you're hearing today in our three ministries that we're talking about are all for the life of the world. We depend upon clean air and water, safe and adequate food supplies, energy from God's creation. And creation depends on us for its continued ability to support us. But sadly, and too often, humankind forgets or ignores the part that we play in this delicate balance. Once we begin to act as if we're separate from creation or superior over creation, using whatever we want, all of the resources and so forth, we will find it difficult to engage in the global warming crisis that's looming in front of us. We know the abundance of creation is seriously threatened. We can deny that climate change exists, but that does not change the reality. Earth is suffering. Just look at these visuals. They need no words.
It's in our DNA.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Sister Ann Regina says it's in our DNA. We know we are part of creation. Activist and poet Bob McCloy writes, "When the earth is sick and polluted, human health is impossible. To heal ourselves, we must heal our planet. And to heal our planet, we must heal ourselves." So this is the mutual relationship that we think about at Jubilee Farm. This is a place of healing and restoration. Healing of creation, restoration of the human spirit. They go hand in hand. So what do we offer here? We have 164 acres, pastures, woodlands, ponds, creeks, wetlands, gardens. A place of healing and restoration. You may recall in our vision statement, we said we share the gift of the land. All are welcome to come and walk the trails. In the spring, summer, fall seasons, we have benches throughout where people can just come, sit, listen to the sounds of nature, experience, feel, touch, enjoy. Explore the awesomeness. This is a picture of our labyrinth A labyrinth is not a maze. It's an ancient form of prayer which invites the journeyer to enter the labyrinth, follow the circular paths in and out and around into the center. Our labyrinth is built of all natural things. We just keep it mowed, and it's all natural. It's half a mile in and half a mile out. And the whole idea is to calm the spirit and to be in touch with, what's going on. What burdens am I carrying? How do I want to think and speak to our God? This house is called La Casa, and it's rented by individuals for weekends, for quiet days, for retreats, and so forth. And also for meetings. There's a small meeting room attached where the garage used to be. It's a complete house, 3 bedrooms and living room, dining room, very comfortable, very, very quiet. And so we invite people to come and just enjoy this very holy, sacred space, both inside and outside. So let's think a little bit about healing the land. What does that mean? This is farmland that we're on. It had been farmed for many, many years, so there were many chemicals put into the earth. And our restoration program is about bringing the earth back to its natural vitality and life. The gentleman there on the right is Nate Hoyle. His education is in environmental science. He's a certified arborist, and he's qualified to do all kinds of risk assessment of all of the areas of the farm. So Nate is instrumental in removing any invasive growth that is choking out the life of the native plants and species. He helps to establish the trails. And he doesn't do this alone. He has college students, the U.I.S. Biology Club, that works with him. And it's an ongoing project. And why do we do that? To bring the earth back to life, to attract the birds, the pollinators, the bees, the butterflies, and so forth. And then you see the wetlands, pastures. And then we come to our gardens. And this is Sister Suzanne here, who is our gardener. And our gardens are around the buildings, the building where some of us live, and La Casa, and the building that I'll show you in a little while. Sister grows flowers, herbs, vegetables, and again, without chemicals. We get the seeds they are organic seeds, very healthy growth that she successfully has. And we count on volunteers during the growing season to help us with the different patches of land. When you come to the farm in the growing season, the first thing you see are the flowers and the herbs growing and so forth. And it's a way of saying, welcome, you're welcome here. She does a beautiful job. She also sells the seedlings starting in April, so you can watch for that on our Facebook page. These are a couple of our volunteers, a mother and son here, who are weeding out one of the areas. Okay, so let's look at community. Who lives there at Jubilee Farm? Well, here you see Hannah and Doc. Those are our 2 llamas. And Lyndon and Corby are alpacas. Now, these 2 are old for llamas. They're in their 20s. And these are younger. They're about 8 years old. Sister Anita, who does all things fiber, takes the fiber from the alpacas because they're younger and is able to spin it and make it into yarn for the weaving and so forth. And then we have our feral cat. We hope to get more. And our hens. And when the hens are really producing, then we're able to bring the extra eggs here to the mother house. We also have a variety of wildlife, most of whom we probably aren't even aware of, but under the ground and over the ground and so forth, deer and possum and groundhogs and turtles and so forth. The wildlife that we really get to see and appreciate are the wild birds. Twice a year, we have what's called a bird banding. And Tony from Lincoln Land, one of the professors, brings his crew, set up a station and nets, and as they catch the birds during the day, they bring them out, band them, and tell you, are these migrating through the area? Are they native? It's an awesome spiritual experience when he hands over one of the birds to you to let go. It's a wonderful, educational, open to the public, and I have it listed as one of the events in your little packet there, May 16th. So that's wildlife that we can see up close and really appreciate. Not so wild at the Jubilee Farm are the sisters who work there. From right to left here, we have Sister Suzanne. You already saw her. She does the gardens. Sister Sharon. Oh, I'm sorry. No, that wasn't Sister Sharon. This is Sister Sharon, who's a pioneer to Jubilee Farm when it began in 1999. She spends a great deal of her time on the road, giving educational sessions and retreats, both throughout the United States and internationally. Sister Margaret Therese, raise your hand, there she is our woodworker par excellence, and you need to come and see her at work in her wood shop. She's also a spiritual director. Sister Anita does the weaving, the spinning, knitting lessons, cooking classes, and also is a spiritual director. And then myself, I'm director and learning. I've only just completed my first year. And then this is Mike. Mike is our jack of all trades, takes care of upkeep of the buildings and does all of the heavy grunt work at the farm. Now Mike has been with us since the beginning of the farm, but prior to that he was with the Dominican Sisters for 20 years, so he's been working with Dominican Sisters for 40-some years. Brave man, brave. Okay, but as I said, we cannot do this work alone, and we love it when volunteers come and participate with us. And you may recognize two people here, Sister Margaret Therese and Jim. Raise your hand, Jim. There he is. Jim spent many, many hours assisting Sister Margaret Therese in preparation for our craft fair this year. Another associate here is Dee Nelson, who comes every week and works in the weaving room as a volunteer. These two are two of our sisters, Sister Lori, who's back there someplace. I thought I saw her. Oh, she just left. Okay, and Sister Elise, who were volunteers in our gardens in the blackberry brambles. And this is Catherine Raystrick, who is the potterer, and she does that as a volunteer. Now, a wonderful opportunity for associates to get involved at the farm is our annual December holiday craft fair, because our associates contribute some of their crafts for us to sell, as well as all kinds of baked goods for the bake sale. And other associates come and join us as selling during the day, assisting us during our days. So again, you can watch our Facebook pages for that, and we always let the associate know when we're getting ready for the fair, because we welcome, it's a joyful day, the more of us, the merrier. These are some of the younger volunteers. We have Eagle Scouts, Boy Scouts that come and do different services. And down here you see Nate, again, who does the restoration with one of the college groups that was here just a couple of months ago, helping us with one of the trails. And we are having a wonderful time right now. We have these two students, David and Martin, who are juniors at Sacred Heart Griffin. And as part of their theology class, they are coming to us 3 times a week, working for about an hour. And here they're in the shed helping Mike take down some paneling. But they're getting introduced to all kinds of things, and just their youth, having their youth around us, we're really enjoying them. They're great workers. Now, this is our newest building on the farm. It's called the Creative Arts Center, because that's also part of restoring the spirit, is to get involved in the arts. That's where we have our pottery, our weaving, our woodworking, and other opportunities to do other kinds of art. This building was totally built because of in-kind and monetary donations. It's in its 3rd year, and we just love the space. Here you see Sister Anita in the loom room, and we have many, many looms, all different sizes, and they have all been donated. There she is, Sister Margaret Therese at work in her workshop. And then we have our pottery room there. Our meeting room, the large meeting room that you see here, can be rented out for family parties or education. It's where this is a weaving weekend that many weavers come together to learn and to perfect their skills. We also do other kinds of educational classes, and there's a couple coming up that are listed on the form. We have one in March and one in April. It's also a place where people can come to have their board meetings, or some organizations rent it out for their staff retreats. We love to have children come to the farm. So many of our children don't have the opportunity, to feel the dirt, to help plant seeds and so forth. And so we've been involved with Compass for Kids, which is an after-school program for the disadvantaged for our public school system, Hope for the mentally and physically challenged, and school field trips. We have retreats and prayer days, both at the farm and away. Sister Sharon will be coming here starting tomorrow to give some classes to sisters and associates here. This one of Sister Sharon is taken in Ireland. She went there a couple of times to a Dominican Eco-Spirituality Center to give retreat. So, what are we about at Jubilee Farm? Hospitality, all are welcome. We try to live what we preach, to live sustainably, to be community, not just we sisters, there are 3 of us that live there, but to recognize the community that surrounds us, all of those creatures and critters. It's a place of celebration, celebrate nature, of collaboration, of restoration and healing, and of prayer with and for creation. And why are we at Jubilee Farm? Because God's mission is at the heart of all we do. And I invite you to come to Jubilee Farm. It's beautiful in any season. It's a little muddy right now, but wear your boots. Winter, spring, summer, fall. We have an apple orchard. Sunrise, sunset, middle of the night. And all are invited to join us by your prayerful support as a visitor, a volunteer, benefactor, participant in any way, because Those who dwell among the beauties and mysteries of the earth are never alone or weary. That's by Rachel Carson, the scientist. So, at your places in your little packet, you'll find a half sheet of white paper. This is inviting you to let us know if you have an idea for Jubilee Farm, what kind of a presentation we might offer, something you might like to know more about, or some way that you might like to get involved. Please fill it out. You can give it to me today. You can mail it. Our address is there, our website and Facebook page. And we're just happy to hear. We're starting to do this anytime we give a presentation so we can find out what are you interested in and how might we be part of that? How might we all collaborate in going forward? So if you don't get it filled out today, you can just mail it to me or send me an email message at the email below. Okay? I thank you for your attendance and your watching and listening, and hope to see you at the farm. Sister Margaret Therese?
I was thinking maybe you could tell them just if they want to drive there, how they do it.
Oh, okay. If you wish to drive to the farm, you just go down Monroe, go west on Monroe, cross Veterans Parkway, and a little over 3.5 miles, you'll see us coming up on the left. There's a sign there that says Jubilee Farm. Good idea. Because our address is New Berlin, but we're more Springfield, so don't go into New Berlin. You'll pass us by. Hope to see you there sometime. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Sister Rosemary, for introducing us to the gifts of creation at Jubilee Farm and for the welcome that was extended to us. If we're ready, we'll begin with our third session. Cor Unum, the House of Hospitality, will be presented by Sisters Beth Murphy, Sister Clare Fichtner, Sister Lori Kirchman, and Maira Herrera. Sister Beth is the Communications Director for the Dominican Sisters and has been professed since 1985. In addition to her ministry in communications for the congregation, the Diocese of Springfield, and the National Coalition for Church Vocations, Sister spent 5 years in Detroit, serving with and among Iraqi refugees, and 3 years in Chicago's Pilsen neighborhood at St. Pius V. She has also been blessed with a brief experience of living in a host house for the U.S. Dominican volunteers. Sister Mary Clare is from Michigan. She has completed 61 years of ministry as a Springfield Dominican. Sister has spent most of her years in parish ministry in the Springfield Diocese. She has served as a teacher and a principal in Catholic schools. Sister Clare has been very active as part of the START team and was one of the earlier pioneers in anti-racism. She is now involved in our newest community venture, which you will hear more about this afternoon. Sister Lori Kirchman holds a BA in music education from the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, and an MA in liturgical music from St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota. Sister Lori taught music to elementary students for 10 years. She has been a director of music and liturgy for 24 years and has been involved in liturgy and music since she was in high school. In addition to these experiences, Sister has served as the vocation director for our community for 6 years and as the liturgist musician here at the Dominican Mother House. She now serves as the liturgist for Holy Family Parish in Lincoln, Illinois. And I'll let Sister Beth introduce Maira. Sister Maira.
Almost. Honorary sister, there you go. Well, welcome back from your break. We're going to work really hard not to go past 3:30. So we want you to get you out of here on time. As Sister Mary Clare and Lori and I were talking about this on Friday, we noted the gospel of for Friday's liturgy, the story of the farmer who plants the seeds in the soil and goes to bed and gets up, the gospel says, and knows not how the plants grow. That's kind of how we feel about Cor Unum. We know not how the plants grow. Well, maybe somebody very kindly turned that off. Let's try again. There we go. Cor Unum is Latin for one heart. And this quote from Sister Ilia Delio, who's a theologian and physicist, is part of the inspiration for the name of the house. I'll read it to you. Maybe it's a little small for you. The Christian of today must gather from the body all the spiritual power it contains. This means to live from the center of the heart where love grows, and to reach out to the world with faith, hope, and trust in God's presence. A year ago, Sister Lori, Sister Mary Clare, and I stood here and we showed the associate formation class a lot of pictures of a house being constructed. Since September, we've been living in the house and engaging in relationships with young people who have come there to engage with us, and with associates who've come there to engage with us. So to start, you're going to hear the story of some of those young women. I'm going backwards. The first person you're going to hear about is sitting right here in the room. Maira Herrera came to us a little over a year ago from Chicago as archivist, assistant archivist for the congregation. And she promptly got engaged with Cor Unum. And I want her to tell you that story rather than you hear it from me. So come on up, Maira.
All right, I'm not sure how much I could share so far, but here it goes. Well, like Sister Beth said, I came originally from Chicago, spent there my entire life. I graduated, I did all my studies over there, so moving to a new town has been quite an experience, I will say. So in that, you have to also meet new people, make friends, and I think one of the hardest things for me is to branch out and try to make new friends, because I'm a little on the shyer side. It might not seem like it, but I kind of am. Pause for laughter. But Sister Beth actually started talking about this when I had just came to the mother house. So it was my first day. I didn't know anybody. Everyone's names started blurring together, and she just came up to me and she said, "Would you like to be part of this community?" And I was like, I don't know. It sounds kind of scary. I just had gotten in here, like maybe about a week ago. I just had moved there into Springfield. So it was a new experience. I didn't know. And so over the course of the year, she kind of, I would say, took me under her wing, and she just kind of more explained it and kind of made me understand what it was more about. And so that's what it was for me, kind of just understanding what Cor Unum is and kind of understanding the house as an overall whole, which has been a lot of meetings so far because we're getting to know each other. It's me and another young lady named Natalie Long, who is an environmental lawyer. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, she couldn't be here, but she is very nice. She's a good cook. She's very intelligent. Hopefully one day will get to meet her. But it's just been me and her and another young woman who will tell you her story later, but we've all just been congregating, talking about potential projects that we can do, talking about our faith, talking about what we hope to get out of Cor Unum House and how that affects our relationship with our beliefs. And it's been a really promising experience so far since November officially when we got started. So for me, that's just been a core thing to do, kind of get familiar with these ladies, and not just, as them as sisters, but as, everyday people, because like I said, moving from one city to another has been a rapid experience, and getting to know them has been such a grand experience for me. And I don't know what else to say, but that is my takeaway so far from being part of Cor Unum and just getting to know where we're all at in our lives, and for them as in their profession, and for me, and as I started my journey in Springfield, not just in Springfield, but in the mother house, and how I connected with everyone. Now my voice is getting a little shaky, so.
Okay, so in that picture with Maira was Natalie Long. And what they have in common is they both moved to Springfield from other locations and got here and had a difficult time finding a community to which to belong. That's part of Daisy's story, too. And Maira mentioned her. Maira and Natalie and Daisy started out as what we're calling the core team. So it's core Unum, but core team, C-O-R-E, team. And we're working together, much like with the anti-racism team. You heard Sister Kathleen and Bob talk about how the persons of color and sisters in the community are making decisions together and working together. This is not about the sisters designing programs for the women. It's about the women and the sisters working together to come together to discover what is needed in the community, what would fulfill their spirits, where do they want to serve, and so we're in the process of discerning all of that. Okay, so Daisy this is such an interesting story. I met her first in a professional role. She did an interview with Sister Marceline and Sister Anita when they went down to the border to help in El Paso during the great immigration crisis that continues to go on there. And she decided at that point that she'd like to get to know us a little better. So I invited her to go with us to the farm for a walk. This is going very slowly. I'm not sure why. Let's see. There she is. Well, it turns out that in Mexico City, where her family is from, her grandmother kept chickens, and she fell in love with the chickens out at the farm. So we had some conversation out there along the lines of, an opportunity for her to get an opportunity to talk to someone who understands journalism about her profession and about what's going on in that world. And then I convinced her to join the core team as well. So there we have all of us. Let's see, no, Sister Clare isn't in there. She must have taken that. Oh, I see, she's behind the screen there. Okay, so that's Natalie up here, myself, Sister Lori, Daisy behind Maira, and then Sister Mary Claire down there on the bottom step. So that was at our first core team meeting, that picture. Then it didn't take too long before we were saying our goodbye to Daisy. And we feel that this is going to be part of our reality at Core Unum. These young people are often in transition in their lives, right? Well, she had an opportunity that she could not pass up. How many of you ever... If you live in Springfield, you probably don't hear it, but how many have you ever heard the NPR program called The World with Marco Warman? Okay, great. It's not available on the local station, but if you like podcasts, you can get it. She is covering the 2020 presidential election for The World. So she had to move to Boston for that. So at our goodbye, she said to us, "I've just found my people, and now I have to leave." But she's still connected to us, and we talk back and forth on the phone, and I'm sure that will continue. She's not given up on this is like under a grant, so it really is just a year's position. So unless they like her so much at WGBH and make her an offer she can't refuse, she will probably return to Illinois because her family's here. So that gives you, I think, a feel for how we're in relationship with people. And now, so these little seeds that the farmers are planting, they're starting to sprout just like the grass in our yard. And Lori is going to talk a little bit more about how all that got started. How did that happen for us? And here she comes.
It's going backwards. Okay, there we go. Okay, so Core Unum is a place of mutual support for young women who want to discover their spiritual depth, create change for a better world, and realize the joy of service. So let me give you a little background. In February of 2016, a committee was put together at St. Cabrini Parish to talk about the possibility of beginning a house of hospitality for young women who might want to live in community and share spirituality. The idea was that the sisters and the young women would live together and learn from each other. And the committee continued to meet for the next year and a half. I'm doing this very briefly. So, in January of 2017, several of our sisters participated in a day of discernment to see who might be interested in actually living in the house of hospitality. So Sister Beth, Sister Mary Clare, and myself and several other sisters came to a discernment day. And then a couple of months after that day, the three of us were assigned the task of beginning a house of hospitality. So that's how it came about. And it became pretty clear early on that what we were trying to do was more than just living in a house. We realized we were starting a ministry with young women, whether or not they lived with us. So it wasn't just that they were going to live with us. It was that maybe 3 would live with us, but we would also have a community of young women that wanted to do different things together. So even before we had a house, we began reaching out to young women, and we started with activities like evenings of spiritual input at the farm. We had game nights, we had cookouts here at the Mother House. And so we began to build relationships. And the foundation of Core Unum is relationships. In our world that is so unable to talk to one another, we wanted to show that there was a different way. And dialogue is that different way. And dialogue is very Dominican. It's the relationships that Dominic had with people that changed their lives. And Dominic spent time with people, and he dialogued with them. He talked to them. He listened to them. And that's what we hope we are about. In the midst of all the activities that we were doing, we started to look for a house. And because we wanted a place where we could sponsor activities and just be a place where young women could gather. Eventually, a good friend of ours, Fletcher Farrar, those are our activities. Sorry, I'm behind. Those are our activities. Okay, there's Bud Farrar. Fletcher Farrar came forward and proposed a partnership with us in rehabbing a house. So by February of 2018, we were meeting with an architect, John Schaefer, to discuss the details of rehabbing the house. The neighborhood association owned that house, and they saved 925 North 5th from the wrecking ball. Twice the city of Springfield wanted to tear it down, so you can imagine what it looked like. There's Calvin Pitts. Calvin Pitts was our contractor. Calvin is a remarkable guy that lives 3 houses down from us, who has a company that trains mostly ex-felons who are trying to rehabilitate their lives. And so his goal is to teach them a trade so that they can work for the union and they can make a living wage. That's his goal. So these men were the ones who worked on our house. The architect and the contractor had a vision of how the house could be restored to its original beauty and at the same time be energy efficient. So this is what it looked like. This was the house before it was rehabbed. It's pretty bad. Oh, you never saw that one? When we first walked in, we could see the sky, and we could see the basement. And so I'm standing there going, really, you think this is going to work? I don't think so. Oops. That's what it looks like now. So they did a wonderful job. So we're very grateful for both our benefactor, Fletcher, and for our community. So I'm going to let Sister Mary Clare now talk about some of the things that we have done already. Do you want to flip this, or do you want?
I'll do it from back here, Claire.
Okay.
The question is asked most often when we meet anybody who knows we're from Core Unum. How do you find young women who are looking for your help? So, many, many ways. These 2 young women were a couple of the earliest young women that we met, and we met them by going over to Jacksonville to the university to the Sunday night Mass for students. And they were 2 of the maybe 10 young people who were there. Well, we started by just inviting them all, and we didn't have any house then. We were here in the division. So we invited them all to come over and just see the comments. So they came, boys and men and women. And then after they were here for prayers and supper and met the sisters and had a great time and went home. And as they left, we said, come back if you want. Well, these 2 young women asked to come back, and they chose the Triduum because everybody else in the college was going home and they weren't. And Maria on your left is from a country in Africa, northern Africa, and she does have a relative in New York. And Yenny is from Beardstown, but neither of them have a lot of extra money, and so they were not going home for that little weekend. So they came here, and they went to all the Triduum prayers, and they were just fit in so beautifully and loved their time here. But now they've graduated. Then after that, they graduated, and Yenny has gone to be near her family in New York, and Maria and Yenny has gone to her. So we don't see much of them anymore. But again, we still are in contact with them. So the work that we're doing, we find out, is not just about who's with us every day or who's not with us every day, or who we see often. It's people who have a belief the same as we do, that if you work with a community of good-hearted, even we don't want to call ourselves holy, but at least interested in holy stuff, that what you end up doing in the world is good, that you develop a goodness within yourself that is welcoming and is cheerful and friendly and invites others to get to know you. That's so much of this is not about just talking to each other word for word. You have to do that too. But it's about the feeling of how to make a home, how to make the neighborhood better, how to go to rallies and get to know the people you're standing next to when you're standing there with your sign. How to do that, how to unite people. This is another young lady who came over here, way over on your right. Anastasia, now this is another way we get to know people, is just by our own individual background. I've known that young lady for many years. I never saw her until she came here. She won a grant she's from Zambia, Africa. She won a grant to come and learn about being an international teacher. And then she decided she might like to come here and be a teacher in one of our schools. So anyway, we've got one of our trainee associates back there, Doug King, and his wife Pam, who have, I believe, influence and know-how in that whole system of education. And so they are helping. The first, the way they met her was, she said to us the last night she was here, "I'd like to go bowling." Well, that was not quite up my alley. So anyway, good fun. Anyway, but Pam and Doug took her bowling and she had a great time with them. But we also introduced them to a couple of ladies that we know who have lived in this city and have flourished and have helped others to flourish, that we just happen to know. They happen to be here. And it was a good opportunity. You notice Natalie's here, it was there too. There was a good opportunity for them to see where they were going if they continue to work toward the goodness of the world. that they will have friends. They're not going to be alone, because that's what they feel right now, like they're alone. They're the only one that wants to do this. Nobody else wants to do this. And, well, maybe there are other people, even your own age, that want to do it. But it's about finding a way to get you together. Okay, now I think I have a whole bunch more. We'll just zoom through it. One night we had this is the core team meeting for planning after supper. Next. During the Christmas vacation, we invited the graduates of Sacred Heart Griffin, whose addresses Sacred Heart Griffin has, and we invited them, everybody, to a night of games and snacks. Well, 5 came. You know, when we invite, we might invite lots of people, and we might get 3. Well, this night we got more. We got 5, and 2 of them are men, by the way. We didn't say it was just for women only. We figured nobody would come. And anyway, they didn't want to play our games. They had their own card game, which was lots of fun, but I don't have time to tell you about it. Next. Okay. This is a beginning of where we have associates connected with us. The sisters have been very wonderful. The sisters here in this house and around the neighborhood in helping us when we had dinners, when we have events, and we can't figure out how to get it all done and be the hospitality hostesses. So they come. Now this was way back in the beginning when we were first at the house, and we had an open house, and we invited the sisters. And then somebody suggested, well, what about the associates? So we invited them too, and there were lots of people who came and saw. But since then, they have come back, because once they saw that we were there and we were not shutting the doors, that they were welcome to come. And so, this lady is an associate from 2018. And you notice what the backyard looked like. But she loves gardening, and so she was very interested. So she came, had supper with, she came for a cluster meeting, which you'll find out about next year. She came for a cluster meeting. She came out and had supper and said evening prayer with us. And then she mailed us some tulip bulbs so that we would, and Lori's already planted them right next to the house. And when Lori got Beth busy, and she planted garlic, of course, in the garden. So we already have our garlic bulbs and our tulip bulbs planted in this yard, which doesn't look anything like this now. Next. Now you see that they look like windows, but those are mirrors. That is a built-in combination china cabinet and buffet. It's one of the most beautiful reproduced pieces of furniture and that's the dining room before we had any table in it. But it wasn't serviceable because, the drawers didn't open and the shelves were only half there. Well, sitting over there is another couple of associate formation people, Rita and Jeff Davis. And one of the things they noticed was that we had a lot of wood in the house. They wanted to know if we had anything that they could do to help. Sure. And so they now all the drawers open. We have them all filled up already with linens, and most of the shelving is done. It's almost finished, and it still looks beautiful, but for a knowledgeable person, it looks complete. And for us, it's great, because now we not only have it there, but we can use it. And without doing any dialogue with anybody, when people come to our house and see that we use all this stuff that got remodeled, it's a whole lot more, it tells you a whole lot more about remodeling than just looking good. To look good is one thing, but that it can actually be usable after you got it all remodeled. to me, that's the success. That's when it's successful. Okay, I really do have to stop so you have some time for questions. Okay? Okay. I don't know. You don't need that, Beth? Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
So you have a handout, and there were, in the interest of saving the ecology, there's some old ones from last year that do not have this address and phone number on them. Oh, there's not? You didn't put them in there. Okay, well then you have our address and phone number and our Facebook. You can follow us on Facebook. But does anyone have a question? We've got a couple of minutes. Oh, you've been listening for a long time. That's hard.
Do you have regular times for prayer in the house?
We do. We pray at 6:30 in the morning and 5 in the evening most days. Mm-hmm.
And we open the shades.
The neighbors have caught on to that. They know that if the shades aren't open, we're not home. One of the neighbors actually realized we weren't home on that really snowy day. And when Clare and Lori got home from church that day, I was on retreat, I think, they found Jeff out there shoveling our driveway. So we are making an impact on the neighborhood, and the neighborhood is making an impact on us. It's really pretty cool. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for listening. We're here where we can talk to you afterward, and I think Sister Mary Joan probably has a few things to say before she lets you go.
Thank you, sisters, for sharing how you're building relationships and community at Core Unum. We're very, very grateful to all of our presenters today, to Bob, to Maira, to the sisters Kathleen, Rosemarie, Beth, Clare, and Lori. Thanks for sharing your mission, and it's evident through your presentation the vitality that you bring to this mission. So God bless and thank you. Again, we thank Sister Beth and Aaron for their tech support each time that we meet. And to those who brought our snacks today, Joe and Jim Powers, Sister Clare, Ed Norma, and Grace Cardenas. Snacks next month are to be provided by Doug King, but I think he needs a partner. So if anyone would like to help him, if you would let him know or me know, otherwise we'll try to help out. Our presenter for our March meeting is Sister Margaret Schreiber, and she will speak on living the liturgy. We will also take time at our March meeting to talk about the next steps. You will be asked to write a letter to Sister Rebecca Ann, who is our Prioress General, telling her what this time of formation has meant to you and asking for acceptance as a Dominican associate if you would like to join us. You will be asked to begin working on your own personal commitment statement that speaks of how you will live out the Dominican charism in your own life. And it doesn't mean that you take on something new, although you have 3 invitations today, if you would like to consider that, but that you bring the Dominican charism into things that you are already doing in your parishes, in your family, in your community. So I will give you samples of all of these at the March meeting. You'll receive a packet and you'll receive an explanation of when they will be due, because they will all be due at the retreat, which is April, the first Saturday in April. So next class is our last formation class of March. Can you believe it? That we're looking at our 9th formation meeting, and then it will be followed by our April retreat, and that will be followed by the first Sunday in May. And you are always welcome to invite family to that, so you might be thinking of that. I will have in your folder a slip for you to indicate to us how many you would be bringing to that so that we can be prepared. And that's a gift from the sisters to you, because commitment is followed by brunch on that day. So blessings on this hard month of February. And like Simeon in today's gospel, let's watch for how the Lord will present himself to us each day. See you on March the 1st. Many blessings. Thank you.